you must have seen that many credible publications are writing about Pak-US relationships, and they are really. I see that they are cherishing this warmth between Pakistan and United States. And today, Foreign Affairs also published an article who's written by Moeed Yusuf. And the main argument is that US policy on India to present India as counterweight for China has failed. Do you agree with this?
But I mean, if you look at how things are right now, that would appear to be a strong argument in the sense that the US-India relationship is in crisis. And we've seen India over the last year pursue a détente with China. It's been looking to ease tensions with China for quite some time. And at the same time, President Trump has also indicated a desire to at least consider pathways toward easing tensions with China. So yeah, I think that on one level, one could argue that the strategic soundness of U.S.-India relations, which of course has always been rooted around this idea of working together to counter a shared concern, a shared threat in China, that things are changing. But I think that if we sort of step back a bit, I think at the end of the day, even with all these changes we've been seeing in, U.S.-India relations, India-China relations, and so on, I think that in all likelihood, the U.S.-India relationship will probably bounce back eventually. India and China will remain strategic competitors because of their long shared disputed border, which is a source of mistrust, and
Okay.
because of China's close alliance with Pakistan. India and China are always going to be, or for quite some time, they are going to be rivals. And meanwhile, I can't imagine the U.S. ending its longstanding policy of viewing China as a competitor too. So that suggests that, there will still be perceived in Washington this
Yeah.
strategic utility of partnering with India. But,
Do you
the
believe
bottom
that?
line.
But do you believe this is a policy shift, some tactical shift, or you suggest that this is just a moment in the relationships of Pakistan and United States?
No, I don't think there's a shift. I mean, well, it is a shift in the sense that U.S.-Pakistan relations now are suddenly much warmer than they were for several years. But if you look at what's happening in U.S.-Pakistan relations, we're not seeing much substantive levels of cooperation just yet. Yes, there has been some counterterrorism cooperation, particularly when it comes to ISK. But everything else to this point has been exploratory, right? I mean, they're talking about things like critical minerals and energy cooperation,
Yeah.
cryptocurrency cooperation, and the messaging from Washington is very positive. I mean, we're seeing the State Department describe Pakistan as a critical U.S. ally, and that's a big change from what we'd seen in recent years. But I think for there to be a true realignment or recalibration, a strategic change in the U.S. approach to Pakistan, it would have to be sustained for longer than the few months that we've seen to this point, and we need to see indications of substantive, very specific levels of collaborations. And
Yeah,
I'm not seeing that
and
just yet.
in recent past, many articles also suggested that United States is looking at Pakistan with a new dynamic, especially if you talk about Pakistan's role in Central Asian region and in South Asian region. They are seeing Pakistan as a stabilizer state. Do you see that is happening actually in White House, in Pentagon, and in U.S. presidency?
I do think there is some truth to that, yes. I mean, I do think that the Trump administration generally is looking at its cooperation with Pakistan through commercial lenses. That's why critical minerals and energy and crypto issues have become really big areas for focus. But yes, I do think that there is a view in Washington that Pakistan perhaps occupies somewhat of a unique strategic status, and that it has very close relations with China. It has friendly relations with Iran and with Russia, and of course also with most of the countries in the Middle East, particularly the Arab Gulf states. And that's something that can be very helpful to U.S. interests, given the state of play geopolitically. And you mentioned Central Asia. Absolutely. I mean, this is an administration that sees a lot of strategic utility in Central Asia because of its critical minerals and natural gas resources. So basically, Pakistan, I think, is strategically placed from the perspective of Washington because it has good relations and presence in some of the key parts of the world that are of significant concern or significant interest for U.S. policy and U.S. interests.
And how do you see the situation in Middle East is also playing any role in shaping this opinion about Pakistan?
Well, I mean, of course, as you know, there is a very senior Pakistani delegation, which included the army chief and the prime minister, that was in Iran soon before the Israel-Iran war began, and so I think that was really a wake-up call, or not a wake-up call, but it was a reminder to the Trump White House about the significant role that Pakistan can and does play in the Middle East. And I suspect that one of the many reasons why the army chief was asked to meet with President Trump at the White House was because of that relationship with Iran, and the fact that you'd had that senior Pakistani delegation there so recently. Pakistan is, I think, not the most critical external actor in the Middle East, but it does have a significant role to play, and because of the fact that, as I said before, it has very significant ties with the Arab Gulf states, along with Iran. And I think that's important from the Trump administration's perspective as it looks at ways to try to, work with like-minded partners to focus on easing tensions, ending conflicts in that region. And certainly that's a position that Pakistan takes as well.
Do you also think that a balanced approach of Pakistan towards China and America, that is also, uh, you know, acceptable? Maybe that is seen as a positive thing and not as a threat.
I think that there's always been skepticism in Washington about this idea of Pakistan wanting to balance its ties with the US and China. And there's a perception here that Pakistan is always going to be much closer to China, or not always, but for now it's going to be closer to China than it is to the US. And I think that's true. You have a very robust, active alliance between the two, whereas Pakistan and the US are doing less. That said, if you look at how the US-Pakistan relationship has changed over the last few months, we're seeing more of an indication that there might be a unique space for the U.S.-Pakistan relationship to occupy, separate from Pakistan's relationship with China. In other words, you're seeing a more clear comparative advantage accrue here for Pakistan's relationship with the U.S. that separates it from its relationship with China. It works with China on military cooperation. It gets a lot of arms from China. It gets infrastructure support from China. But with the U.S., it looks like there's this greater pitch towards greater commercial cooperation,
Yeah.
all right? And if things do move forward, if we start to see more collaborations between the US and Pakistan on things like energy and critical minerals, that's something that we're not seeing as much from, at least from now, from China. And I think that's the key to a healthy balancing policy, right? If Pakistan is going to successfully balance its relations with both the US and China, those relationships will need to be distinct. They'll need to be distinct, and they'll need to focus on different types of cooperation that might complement each other but are not duplicative.
But last comment about how this all has put pressure on Indian foreign policy, uh, because White House is constantly alleging that they are more closer to Russia, and their Russia-centric policy is not very liked in US. But we have seen that India is also exploring new partnerships in the region. Do you think this is because of this all pressure which has been put on them because of Pakistan, United States warmth?
But I think that these are two relationships taking opposite and surprising trajectories, but on different tracks, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that we'd start seeing tensions creep into the U.S.-India relationship for reasons that I think had less to do with what was going on with U.S.-Pakistan relations and more other factors. I mean, for instance, I think that President Trump was aggrieved. He felt aggrieved by how the Indian government was treating him, not letting him take credit for his
The
role in the
ceasefire, yeah.
India-Pakistan ceasefire. Yeah, certainly. I think that India has generally accepted the fact that the U.S. and Pakistan will have a workable relationship, but I do think that the fact that the U.S.-Pakistan relationship has taken off so quickly and so soon after the India-Pakistan conflict, that coupled with the fact that you have other tension points in the U.S.-India
Yeah.
relationship